Dream Team? It's your boy Neal back with another reaction video, guys. Here we are with the Formula One rivalry that inspired Hollywood. I'm so excited to jump into this. I know we did the first two parts and took a small break before we got to part 3. There were other videos I had to get to, but I'm back. I couldn't let you guys down by not finishing. So before we jump in, make sure you subscribe, ring notification bell, get a video a thumbs up, and let's finish up.
As possible. For his own health, for sure it was important, but racing was still on his mind. He knew he still wanted to race, and with that, he knew there was still a championship to be won, and that his main rival was still in the game. For Hunt, the 15th of August brought about some mixed emotions. On one hand, he was obviously concerned for Niki. No matter how big a rivalry may get, camaraderie in the paddock was an actual thing. But at the same time, this was an open goal, and to make things a little better for him, Ferrari had boycotted that weekend, partially because of Niki's crash, and partially because they believed that the FIA was being biased toward the British teams. Hunt scored pole position by a million miles. He also set a new lap record in the race, but in the close Fuji Grand Prix, he could only manage 4th place, finishing behind the Lotus of Gunnar Nelson, while the Penske of John Watson went on to win the race. It was only 3 points, but it was 3 points closer to Lauda's championship tally. In the next race at Zandvoort, Hunt held off the Ferrari of Regazzoni and the increasingly annoying presence of Watson's Penske to win the Dutch Grand Prix and take him to within striking distance of the championship lead. The next round of Monza was always bound to stir up emotions. It was Italia, the meeting place for the Tifosi. Ferrari were now back at full strength after only taking Regazzoni to Holland in the round before. They had also drafted in Carlos Reutemann, who they had tabs on for a while, and in qualifying, the Argentine would outpace Regazzoni, proving that he was a world-class driver for sure. But that wasn't the only news out of the Ferrari camp that weekend. Niki was at the track, and he was racing. Through the stupid questions posed by the douchebag reporters and the blood pouring from his bandages, he persevered and stuck his Ferrari on the 3rd row of the grid, ahead of both his Ferrari teammates. As for Hunt, well, he was down at the back of the grid thanks to a fuel infringement. So much for that British bias. Lauda would take a valiant 4th place to help eke out his lead in the World Championship, while Hunt took a trip to the beach on lap 11 after playing a game of chicken with Tom Price. In the next 2 rounds, Hunt would take maximum points, while Lauda failed to capitalize. So it was a Hunt and Lauda showdown for the title, as they both headed for the land of the rising sun. Although that weekend, someone turned the damn sun off.
Oh, dang. Fuji, Japan, round 16.
The situation was pretty clear. Lauda led the championship on 68 points, while Hunt was in 2nd with 65 points. Jody Scheckter lay in 3rd with 49 points, but with only 9 points available from the weekend, he was out of contention. If Hunt were to win this championship, he basically had to win, or else finish 4th or better. Lauda's job, meanwhile, was easier. Just follow Hunt home. Shouldn't be too hard, right? True. Well, in qualifying, he did what he needed to do. Hunt put his car on the front row of the grid in 2nd place, but Lauda was right behind him in 3rd. The Constructors' Championship was on too. Ferrari had one hand on the trophy, but McLaren could very well spoil their party. And Tyrrell could very well spoil their party by finishing ahead of them in the standings should they decide to melt in the final dance. Although that probably wasn't foremost in McLaren's mind at the time, because they were playing mind games with Ferrari the whole week with made up rumours and what forth, and arriving in Japan early to ward off any potential jet lag and to acclimatise to the region. And it was working, although making Ferrari self-destruct is hardly the most difficult feat in the world. Come race day, however,
so much disrespect to Ferrari in this video, dog. So much disrespect.
Fog was terrible, the rain was worse, and on some parts of the circuit, there was a lake where the track should have been. In nowadays F1, you can forget about a safety car start. They'd cancel this thing outright. After 3 hours. But with the barnstorming title fight between Hunt and Lauda having captured the imagination of the world, the race was being televised around the globe live on television. This was a PR coup that the organisers could not afford to bungle up, so despite the objections of the drivers, with only Jackie X wanting to start the damn thing, they took up their positions on the grid, ready to race.
Oh my god. That's crazy that they were willing to put to the safety of, they were willing to risk the safety of all those drivers for this event. But I do understand. Do you want to see who wins this? You want to let them drive to decide who the winner is.
For Hunt and Lauda, this was it. Hunt got away well, taking the lead into turn 1, while Lauda was taking it relatively gingerly, but who could blame him? With the delays and the rain and such, the visibility was so bad.
Oh yeah, I think I remember this scene in the movie. I won't say what happens for anybody who hasn't watched the movie, but I remember this scene for sure.
Couldn't even see the light that shone out of Jean-Pierre Jarrier's ass. After 2 laps, and with Lauda down in 5th, Hunt's chances of winning the championship were pretty damn good. And after 2 laps, and with Lauda down in 5th, Hunt's chances of winning the championship were pretty damn good. And then on lap 3, they got a whole hell of a lot greater. Lauda, having come to the conclusion that life is better than a vase and a handshake, pulled into the pits and retired from the race. Mauro Foggieri offered to tell the Commendatore that he had an engine issue, but Lauda rejected that. Tell him the truth, he said. He wasn't prepared to kill himself over something so trivial when, as the great Dominic Toretto maintains, what's real is family. He wasn't the only one to withdraw, however. Emerson Fittipaldi, Carlos Pace, and Larry Perkins all threw their hands up in surrender, and all 3 of those men were exceptional drivers. That gives you an idea of what them conditions were like. For Hunt, however, the title was more important, and he was still leading, although Vittorio Brambilla had something to say about that. Brambilla was as...
Yeah, Hunt hadn't won yet, man. I mean, I agree with Niki in this situation. It's not worth risking your life for. But Hunt, like, this was his life to him. Like, Niki had family. He had these things around him. Hunt lived a lifestyle where he didn't have those things. This was everything to him.
Good at driving as he was with handshakes. In other words, he'd crush you. And for a time, he was challenging Hunt for the lead, which went well. Then Jochen Mass moved up into 2nd place, acting as rear gunner support for James, even if he didn't really need it. Although if he did need it, he wasn't going to get it, as Mass would crash off on lap 36. Hunt was cruising, but as the race started to evolve, so did the weather, and eventually the track started to dry up a bit. When that happened, Hunt's tyres started to fade away. Despite the team desperately trying to tell him to stop driving on the dry line, tearing his wet weather tyres to pieces, he ignored them. And on lap 62, he was passed by Depailler and Andretti. 3rd was still good though, and after Depailler pulled into the pits with new tyres, Hunt was safe again. But then his tyres let go for good. With a handful of laps to go, he pitted for a new set, and when he emerged from the pits, he was down in 5th place. At this point, Niki Lauda would be the world champion. Ahead of Hunt was Depailler, and now both drivers were on new rubber. They could scythe through the field, but it was still hard as hell to figure out who was where. Depailler would negate the 2 drivers ahead of him. However, it wasn't enough to challenge Andretti. I mean, after all, he was a full lap ahead of everyone else, and Depailler's charge led him to take 2nd on the rostrum. But what about Hunt? Well, the man he really had to pass was the dude who lay in 4th, which in this case was Clay Regazzoni, the Ferrari driver, the man who you would imagine would have risked life and limb to keep him behind, all in the name of the Scuderia and of the old man. Thing is, however, a few rounds before this one, Enzo had made it clear to Clay that he would not be a part of the team for next year. They were high on Carlos Reutemann, sometimes in both senses of the word, and so out of a job and perhaps feeling betrayed, he opened the door for Hunt. As far as he was concerned, there was no reason to remain loyal anymore. Ferrari. Butchering silver-plated championships since 1951. He also passed Alan Jones for good measure, so when he crossed the line to take the checkered flag, the scoring showed him to have finished in 3rd place. Although he refused to believe it for a while, in fear that magic pixies may at any time render his result null and void, it eventually dawned upon him that indeed he, James Hunt, was the 1976 Formula One World Drivers' Champion.
That's crazy, dog.
Hunt celebrated his victory about as you would have expected. He got pissed as a newt on the plane back home to London, drinking the cabinet dry as they flew over the North Pole, and partied right up until his world blacked out. He became the darling of his home nation, and further cemented his place as a hero of British sports. He attended celebratory banquets, commemorative events, and pretty much anything that possessed more than a crate of brandy. He was truly on cloud 9, whereas for Lauda, he wasn't so much. For sure, he made the right call. I mean, Enzo Ferrari said so himself. The conditions were appalling. It wasn't worth killing himself over. And And this is Enzo Ferrari we're talking about here. But when Lauda returned to Maranello, there was movement to make Carlos Reutemann the #1 driver. Eventually though, Lauda got his lead rolled back, but he was lambasted by the Italian media, some claiming that what happened in Fuji on his part was cowardly. But Lauda had never been one to suffer fools greatly. He didn't really much care. His talking was done on the racetrack, and he responded in the best way possible by winning the 1977 Formula One World Championship. He'd retire briefly at the end of 1979, only to return in 1982, winning another World Championship in 1984, this time for McLaren, in a hard-fought battle with the great Alain Prost. He retired completely in 1985, shifting focus toward his airlines, an advisory role within teams. He worked with F1 teams such as Jaguar and Ferrari, but perhaps more notably with Mercedes, drafting in the likes of Sir Lewis Hamilton and helping make that team into the Goliath that it is today. For Hunt, however, it was a less jubilant time post-1976. He only won 3 more Grand Prix after his World Championship victory, and after completely drowning at Walter Wolf's team in 1979, he retired. Thereafter, he stepped into a commentary role, and there, he made a name for himself for providing a different style of commentary that was otherwise on offer from Murray Walker. He called out drivers if they drove like us, or weren't even trying, and whether it would be completely venting against the apartheid regime in South Africa, or suggesting that Jean-Pierre Jarier be banned from F1 for being himself. His commentary career from 1979 to 1993 earned him legions of fans, adding to the massive amounts that he already had. The rivalry that these men produced is still talked about to this day, and was immortalized in the 2013 film Rush. And although that film portrayed a somewhat nasty rivalry, they were in actuality good friends, right from the early days of their racing careers. And
oh dang, I was gonna say they showed at the end that they were like real good friends, but like during the movie it didn't seem like they were friendly at all. And I just ruined it, didn't I? So sorry.
Even throughout the 1976 season itself, while Niki appeared to have it all as a 3-time champion of the world, James was, as he puts it, among the very few that he liked, and even fewer he respected, and the only man he envied. If we ask ourselves why we watch the sport, the buck ultimately stops at the people behind the wheel. They are who we cheer and support, who we hope to see prosper and succeed. We celebrate these drivers because, despite coming from all corners of the globe and possessing different characteristics, different ideals, different outlooks and everything, they are there united by a love of racing and a want to be champion. And even though neither of them are here with us today, they still live in the hearts of racing fans around the world. We miss them badly, but we will remember them forever.
Absolutely phenomenal, man. Rivalries build legends. Facts. Definitely facts, definitely. That was incredible, man. That's all we got. Make sure y'all subscribe, ring notification bell, get a video a thumbs up. It's your boy Neal, out.